Alrighty, welcome back to the Natty News Daily podcast. We got two Americans to one Canadian, even though I'm repping Canada's shirt. So, Connor St, welcome back to the show, man. It's been a good bit of time since we've chatted on here, but good to have you back, man.
Thanks, Dan. It's great to be here. Thank you for the invite. Always been a fan of Natty News Daily. Yeah, I think it was at the end of my last season, you guys nabbed me. I actually listened back to it the other day to remember what I said because I thought it could be pertinent for this. So, yeah, excited to have another chat with you guys about the wonderful sport of natural bodybuilding.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and we were just talking before we started recording, right? Like it seems like it hasn't been that long, but you had said, 2022 Monster Mash. So fall of 22 is the last time you stepped on stage, which
Yep.
in bodybuilding time is like forever, right? 3 years away from the stage. But we know that there's been a lot that's happened in that time. So for those listeners that aren't kind of aware of like your career and like what you've been doing and all that, like let's pull it back to the 22 season, talk about how that went, and then we'll just kind of like chronologically go forward and just like talk through because we know there's been some differences since that prep going forward into this current year.
Absolutely. Yeah, a whole bunch has changed. I ended up even before the 22 season, I won my pro card in 2019 at Natural Mania in New York. And then the pandemic kind of extended this whole compete as a pro timeline thing, basically, is in the shortest way I can put it. And then since then, the WNBF got rid of this 1 year pro card rule thing. They got rid of that, so it's not even a discussion anymore. But I basically did not make my pro debut till 2022, and I did two shows that season. I did the WNBF Calgary show and I did the WNBF Monster Mash. And so that was kind of my first dip into pro shows. And I listened to myself back in the other podcast, and I said I wanted more of the pro stage. So I have a little bit more of that planned for this upcoming season. Yeah, that's kind of where I've been the last little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, so coming out of the 22 season, you wanted to kind of like really establish yourself in the pro circuit. What, from like a physique assessment standpoint, stood out to you? Because I mean, those shows that you did, I mean, I remember if people look back at that Calgary show, that was you, that was Omar, and that was Birdo, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I was very stoked to get compared to those guys, monsters for sure. And so when I looked at the comparison pics, I mean, I kind of knew what the story would be, but it's really obvious when you look at the pictures. So I am lacking a lot of depth through the torso, and so when I say the torso, I mean in the front, the pecs is a big one that was holding me back, and then as well too, interestingly enough, kind of the upper middle back area, so kind of that area where you got all sections of the traps, upper, lower, middle, and then even some of those like rhomboids and thoracic erectors, kind of all running through there. So that was where my focus has been the last little bit, is trying to get that torso heap a little bit denser and not look paper thin when I turn to the side or when I hit a back relax or front relax, right? So that was the challenge, to try and see my physique being improved upon to match up a little bit better at that higher caliber of level, basically. Yes.
I think that's an interesting point you said, especially about like looking paper thin. Not that you look paper thin like you did,
Yeah,
but like
sometimes I
looking
think I
paper
do.
thin for the
Yeah.
side. But I find that's something that like you don't necessarily see in photos, right? Like you see people in Instagram, they look crazy, and then you see them turn, and it's like there's just like it's not quite there, right? Like they're just lacking that depth, that you see in 3D. But I just wanted to double click on that because I think that was something
Yeah,
I've
that's
run into and
that
seen, and
that's something I'm always envious of. Is like, like a lot of people, they make a big deal about the conditioning and stuff like that. And like I think
yeah,
kind of everyone has seen that now, and now what's more impressive is just getting on stage like super 3D. Like at least that's what, when I see a physique that I look up to, it's like something that someone's that like 3D in the pecs, 3D in the back, crazy around arms and delts. And obviously, I'm just gonna list you list every body part, but just that kind of 3D popping look is kind of what I've been aspiring to, get closer to for sure.
Well, I mean, you've certainly checked the box on conditioning, right? So it's almost like grass is always greener. Like I'm still
Yeah.
striving for the conditioning. Not that I have the 3D either, but like,
Yeah.
if people don't know your physique, I encourage them to look at your Instagram, check out your stage photos, because like paper thin is a perfect definition to like your skin when you compete. Even like 12 weeks before you compete, like you hold some legendary conditioning. So like
Yeah.
And on your frame, like you're a taller individual. So a taller individual that has a knack for getting not overly conditioned, very conditioned. Like, yeah, the other level you need to pull is like you have to make things rounder because like you've already kind of capped out the other aspects a little bit, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's like I can get on stage and I can, if I they look at my structure and look at my conditioning, that can take me far. But next to someone who has that, density and pop, which would be like that would be the perfect case in the Calgary show with Omar winning that show. Like, he might have not had the best bone structure up there, but that mofo was just dense and round everywhere, man. Like he like at first when I looked at those pictures, I was surprised that they gave him the win. But then once I got good footage of it and saw some video footage, I understood real fast. Trust me. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and all three of you have like very distinct features about your physiques too, which make it very interesting to compare those three. Berto being a little bit shorter, he's got his like freaky vascularity that goes in, but like, yeah,
hmm
it's very interesting to see. So right, you knew what you needed to change. How did
Yeah.
you go about changing those things?
Yeah, and so I think it's really interesting as I reflect on this because I do think I made some progress in those areas, but it didn't really come until later in the off season where I was able to shift some of my training variables. So, like obviously I was trying to maximize volume and intensity and like exercise selection and biomechanics, all those things. I'm looking at everything everyone's doing to try and get the best result. But I didn't feel like I was really able to put it together until maybe the last 6 or 7 months. And so one of the big changes I made for the chest, and if you're following this kind of discussion, maybe you're sick of hearing it, or maybe it's your first time hearing it, but it's everything about the rib cage, how you're holding the rib cage, right? So if you're watching this on YouTube, maybe I could demonstrate, but when I would train chest before, I would arch my back and throw my ribs up. And I would, because I was trying to focus on the length of position, I would retract really hard. And I was able to get myself in a position where I was moving some loads in the lengthened position, but I wasn't really protracting my shoulders, right? And so I saw some of this Jonathan Warren guy's content, which was very, oppositional to what I believed to be true at the time. So that was very, ear catching to me. And I watched his video multiple times as well. And I started to play around with it too. And I realized too, he had done a podcast with a fellow Canadian, Eric Seifert, who is over at Pure Muscle and Fitness, who trains a few pro bodybuilders like IFBB guys. And I thought this stuff is so interesting. This is so opposite to what I believe. And I can't get any pecs for the life of me. After 15 years of bodybuilding, it just won't come on. I have to explore this and fully just dive into this whole rib cage and shoulder thing. Like I have to just like embrace it, embody it, like every aspect of it. Like I watched Jonathan's video on the pecs probably 30 times to get everything little detail. And then as well too, like I came where I had a little bit of a break from work and I realized, oh my God, this Eric guy who vibes with Jonathan and all this stuff is 5 hours away from me. So right away, I booked a trip to go see Eric and we did pecs together. Right. And so he got every little nuance and position on me, how I hold the ribs, even my hand position. Like I would kind of be cocked back. He kind of fixed more of a neutral wrist type thing for me. And like even my head and neck position, he fixed too. I used to kind of throw it back a little bit, and he had me do more neutral. And so now a press for me looks like having a stacked rib cage over the pelvis and leading with protraction and letting the shoulders come across the body, getting that protraction. And there is retraction at the bottom, but not so much that I'm going to throw everything and lose my stack. So that was the biggest difference. And as soon as I did that, it just felt like there was this level of activation in kind of these sternal fibers and maybe the clavicular fibers too, a little bit that I just had never tapped into. So right away, that seemed to make a big difference. I didn't really even have that much of a structured program or exercises. I was just kind of experimenting and doing my best to move in this way that these people thought was advantageous for the pecs. And it seemed to work. Like I didn't get a whole lot of time in my off season to really execute it to the level I would have liked, but it seemed to be, make enough of a difference previous to what I was doing to see some new progress, in that front of the rib cage, the pecs, especially the sternal fibers. I was quite shocked by how potent the changes were in such a short amount of time. So that was really crazy for me as well. Yeah, that
I
would
have
have
a few,
been the pecs.
yeah,
Yeah.
few things there. So it is interesting, like as an advanced athlete, like especially you make a change and it's like all of a sudden this area looks fuller. Like there's something there. Like it's crazy how like you can key in on it because there's times I'll do stuff like that. But what so you kind of demonstrated what you were doing. Were you pressing kind of in a sort of a low incline to flat sort of range, and what types of movements did you end up settling on? Did you end up liking some of the machines or the dumbbells or
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
come about?
So I think the way I want to answer this, and I will answer that question too, but the way I want to answer it for the viewers to understand my experience is that now I don't think the exercise selection matters as much as just keeping the ribs in place and protracting the shoulders. Everything feels pretty good now. Any variation of chest fly or chest press seems to work pretty well. Now the ones I did default to, I did have a low incline press in there for a while, and that was a really, really hard one to reprogram because I was just not able to move with that stack very well at first. So that was one that was like a very challenging one for me to take this kind of new pattern of movement and have it be reproduced every single time I came in and trained basically. So that was one was a low incline dumbbell press. What I really like too is I actually even at my little crappy apartment gym there was a functional trainer there, and so I would like to set up the bench, like you're doing like a shoulder press, but have the cables come at any angle you want, right? So a dual cable
Yeah.
press where it could just be middle here, middle pec here, or if you wanted, you could come low to high for more clavicular, or you could do more of a decline. So variations like that I would do. And like I said, focusing on just keeping that stack and protracting those shoulders the whole way through, which is the opposite of what I was always taught. What I had always been told was arch and retract and keep your chest in front of your shoulders, right? That's what most people say most of the time. But I was like I said, I was willing to get outside of that because I had been doing that for years, and obviously the way I applied it as an individual. Not saying it's not a great cue for some people, or that some people aren't benefiting from setting themselves up that way. But definitely from my experience, it was just not doing it. It was not doing it. So I had to make that change, and it paid off.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point too. I think it does seem like rib cage size and actual anatomical structure does impact how moving,
Yeah.
just different.
And
'Cause like, yeah. Because
I,
I
I
can
was,
actually, it's interesting for me. Like, I can actually get a lot of upper pec from like decline type pressing. Like, if
Mhm.
I'm really pulling up in, but it's just like that's almost counterintuitive, but it's interesting. Yeah,
I mean that they're all the pecs at the bottom are going to be pulling together, right? So any
yeah,
type of press should work. The majority of the pecs. Obviously, if you go on an incline, you start to reduce the contribution of the kind of the lower fibers a little bit. Like they can't contract as well if the higher you put the
yeah.
incline. But um, yeah, and I was able to buy into this too. Like I think a lot of people would see this stuff and kind of write it off. And, I had a lot of buy-in because I knew that I kind of done the same thing with lats. Like I used to train lats with all this extension as well too, right? And I could never get any lower lats or anything, training more like this. And then when I learned to bring the rib cage down and kind of drive that shoulder depression, like that's when I was able to get lats. So I was like, okay, it must be similar on the other side of the ribs with the pecs. I just need to get it down basically. So I figured like once I do this, I might finally have pecs after 15 years of bodybuilding, and it seemingly it's been working well. So yeah, it's that's what kind of gave me the buy-in to like really give it a shot because I knew that if I'm moving in a certain way for a long time and I'm not getting the result, if I can make a change, then I can get something kind of new. And I know that's kind of the key to progressing as an advanced athlete. So sometimes, it's novelty, but it's really just, dialing in your execution for a certain body part, really.
I think
Yeah,
movement execution is probably the biggest variable, honestly.
Mm.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
more I get into things, it's like I really think the way that you execute movements is it's almost
Yes.
the
Yeah, someone actually just asked me that on one of my like Q&As, like what do you think is the most underrated variable for like advancing lifting? And I literally said like your precision with the volume you're doing. It's not more volume, it's not less volume, it's not more
Mhm.
intense. Less intensity is can I take the exact same thing I'm doing and make it more effective? Right? And that's exactly what you
Yeah.
did, tweaking your technique. And I think that argument stands and people would agree with it if you talk about a squat, right? Because anatomy matters so much for how people squat, and that's like a given now, right? But now
Yep.
when it's the rib cage or it's these other structures, it's like I don't know if I believe that or not. And yes, you're right. Like there's a huge controversy now about like these ideas and beliefs. But I do give you credit for being willing to experiment because that's what we all should do. I think a lot of us get set in our ways and say like it's worked this far. Like I'm a pro bodybuilder. Like I've obviously done it. Like I
Mm,
just need to do more of what I've been doing or train harder or more volume. It's like, well, we can refine and get smarter
yeah.
and get more experience. And even if you try and it doesn't work, there's probably still something you can take away from that. Whether it forced you to try a different, training intervention that you hadn't done before, like the cable press, right? Like that in
Yep.
itself, if you look over the last couple years, that's a very popular movement now. 10 years ago, it wasn't. You
Yeah.
could
No
you
one
would
would do
never
it.
see
Yeah.
someone do a cable press on a functional trainer. Right now, it's like everyone's staple movement because a couple people did it and they realized like, wow, this really feels good. So like even if the rib cage positioning didn't make the impact on you, but it led to you doing the cable press that now you get a great stimulus from, we can always take something away from these arguments and these debates.
Absolutely. And like another thing too, I can just keep going on this whole torso thing is like trying to get my traps to grow a little bit. And that's been some new movements too. And I'd love to go and see Eric to get his take on it, but I kind of watched some of his stuff and kind of put together some of the things on my own. And what I did with on a programming variable with that is, my legs are a bit of a stronger body part. So I ended up throwing in a few sets of traps, before my lower body days. And so I was focused more a little bit too, rather than just like a shrugging motion, is kind of get a little bit more upward rotation, which was another thing I hadn't trained. So even just for that, that trap through that lower trap, leading almost like a single arm cable Y raise, but leading with shoulder elevation basically, and trying to get up here to get a little bit of the low trap, and then as well too doing some mixture of retraction and upward rotation as well too to start some workouts there, because that certainly would be another thing that I wouldn't have trained that often, right? Is getting that just a pure retraction based, row with some rotation wasn't something that was really in the program too often. So I figure, okay, like my mid back is kind of crap. So if I spam this a little bit, or at least, get myself in a solid program with it, hopefully I'll see some improvements. And I do think the traps improved a little bit. And that was another thing too when I posed next to Leroy is that dude's pretty dense in the back, right? And so,
I
one
remember
of his
that was
suggestions,
when that was initiated. Yeah, I remember you posted
yeah,
about that.
his suggestion was, try and he just said kind of like center of the back, and I was like, so is it traps? Is it erectors? He's just like, just your back, bro, the center of your back, and I was like, all right, let's figure this out. Let's figure this out. So my program would be, the day one would be like an upper day where I was doing chest and lats, and like it was all very focused on both the chest and the lats. There wasn't a whole lot of like traps in the mix when I'm training those lats. At least I didn't find there was. And so then the next day I would start off my lower body day with just some traps, 4 or 5 sets of traps, hammer strength, low row, drive like almost like a Kelso shrug motion, driving retraction, upward rotation, a lower trap raise like I'm describing, and maybe even just a little bit of upward rotation with a single cable, really getting following this line of your trap up and trying to really pick it up here rather than just kind of shrugging up and down. More of this, like I said,
Yeah.
rotation of the scapula, which I'd never done. So that seemed to do something, man. It seems like it responded pretty quick. So that's kind of the rhythm of programming I got to kind of make that torso a little bit better, basically. Make it hopefully a little bit more competitive against the guys that I lost to previously. So yeah, that's kind of where I've been at.
What I love too is like you are by definition describing the scientific process, right? Like I have a theory or a hypothesis, I'm going to apply these techniques to these strategies and we're going to find a result, right? And I'm going to implement this, outside knowledge, my anecdote, my personal experiences with biomechanics, like you take it all together and put it together and find the result. But as soon as you say like science-based bodybuilding or evidence-based bodybuilding, like people shy away from it. But here you are just like I just want to make myself more jacked, right? Like it's not like
Yeah,
this peer-reviewed article said I need to do this exercise. It's like, hey, these people have this theory. I have this issue. Let's see if this solves my problem, right?
yeah,
Yes or no. All right, discard or like prove hypothesis positive,
Especially if you've been bodybuilding for a long time, I think you kind of have to do that because, like at some point you need to innovate yourself, right? And not it's very, very rare you're going to find an athlete that does everything right for every body part right away. And the people who do that, they're like your 22-year-olds who are like your Benjamin Schuster type people that are just, dominating the stage right away. I mean, someone must have taught that guy real well, you know what I'm saying? Like, or he just intuitively connected to everything, but most people don't find themselves in that situation. I found myself in the situation where I've been bodybuilding for years, but hey man, I did a lot of poor practices earlier on. It doesn't mean I didn't still progress and make progress and climb the ranks a little bit, but there was some things, man, that I could still figure out, even at 35 years old, doing this for 12 years, right? So yeah, that's exactly what you said. Scientific process, think about what you've done in the past, think about, what haven't you tried, what's worth trying, what makes sense, and then you got to give it a go and just look at the results. Look at the physique will tell you, man. The physique will tell you.
Mhm. Yeah, that actually that spurred a thought in my brain because I know some of the like the side effects of prep that you were dealing with, like the water retention and everything like that. And I
Yeah.
don't want to skip too far ahead, but obviously you're prepping now. I know you're very lean now, and I also know that you just announced that you're working with Brandon Kempner for this prep. Which, correct me if I'm wrong, is this the first time you've worked with a coach, or first time in the last couple seasons?
For some of the last couple seasons, I think the last coach I would have used was back in 2016. It was Brian Ahlstrom.
Okay.
So it's been 9 years since I've been coached through a season, and so far it's been awesome. I'm
This year and like how this prep itself has gone, and then I think that'll like tie into that discussion topic that kind of like spurred in my brain there.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, I started dieting just 8 weeks ago. I stayed I basically had a prep I was trying to conduct in 2024. It didn't work out, but I was basically stage lean. And then so that whole off season I stayed very, very tight. Like I did not get over the weight of 186 on any given day, which is pretty lean for me.
Before we skip that, what caused you to shut that one down? Because you were looking crazy,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah,
could have stepped on stage like that, right?
Yeah, so my partner at the time had some family health issues, and I felt like it was the right choice to shut down prep to do my best to try and help out in that situation. And so the timing with that was not great. It was kind of a spur of the moment decision, and then basically that's the choice I ended up making was to cut the season. I only had I think the Calgary show planned that year, so it was just going to be the one show. So yeah, unfortunately, because of those happenstances, I felt like it was the responsible choice to drop out at the time. So
How
that's
far
kind
out
of
did you cut it?
about 3 weeks out, I think.
Three
Yeah,
weeks out. Okay.
yeah, I was basically ready, and I do think too I'd overdieted a little bit, so I wasn't feeling my most confident about it. But just with the confliction with the travel and trying to stay on task with doing with what was going on, it seemed like it didn't make any sense to try, which is unfortunate, but that's how it felt at the time. So yeah, that's kind of why that got shut down.
Gotcha.
Yes, yeah, and then of course the itch for the bodybuilding stage was not scratched, and so I was very cognizant of that, and then so into that off season with air quotes was very very strict. Like I definitely every day at post that diet, I wanted to be eating more food, absolutely, but I didn't. I just stayed on, the slightest surplus of calories, coming from a pretty shredded physique and just getting my training in order, kind of the discussion we just had, all those things I was doing in the background. And then it seemed to kind of pay off. I was able to kind of regain maybe the muscle I lost during that prep and then add a little bit more with some new training focuses and I didn't get that much fatter. Basically, I was able to keep it pretty tight, and I don't know if that's something I'll be able to keep replicating. I don't know if it's something I'd recommend to people in all situations, but I think in the right situation, you can make it happen. And so I'm a little bit of proof of that. That if you have all the factors come together, like you can make lean gains and have a pretty short product contest prep your next one if you can get all the factors straight, right? Which is easier said than done for a lot of people. But in this situation, with the right motivation, with the right setup, lifestyle setup, I was able to do it. So that was pretty exciting for me for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and when
yeah.
you say pretty lean, like for the listeners again, like your pretty lean is most people's like peeled out of their minds, right? Like probably anywhere in that process, you could have stepped on a pro stage and placed top five, right? So like you,
Yeah,
you
I'd
stayed
have to look.
really.
I'll have to look back at some pics. I have some pics from when I started prep, and I know like there was never really like I still had lines in my glutes the whole time. I still had veins in my quads. I kind of gained a little bit more body fat around the torso type area, but it wasn't too extreme. So yeah, it was being like IG ready the whole time, basically, is one way to put it. And like I don't want to overly promote that because it's maybe not the right choice for everyone, but in the right situation for the right athlete at the right time, it could be the right choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
steep was your surplus? Like what sort of,
Yeah, so I didn't really go over 2,800 calories most any day really. I think I might have
Okay.
done a few days at 3,000 where I felt like I needed to have that food, but
What was your
basically,
could you give a frame for like a reference point for what you were eating before, like roughly what the kind of surplus is?
yeah, so I can go back even further than that. Like even my contest prep deficit might be around on average, let's say on average towards the end, maybe about 17 to 1,800 calories and maybe 10 to 12K steps and maybe like the odd cardio session thrown in here, but not too much. So
Yeah. Okay.
that might be a deficit to get me to the stage ready lean. And then like to like a maintenance of that would be maybe like 2,400 calories with maybe 10K steps in place, no cardio, training 5 days a week, something like that would be around maintenance. So yeah, but and then I was able to just kind of ride that a little bit. I kind of just maybe a lot of days I was probably at 2,600 calories, and then as I just gained a little bit of body weight, I think that kind of line of that small surplus went up, and I was able to do 2,800 a lot of days. But I was
Yeah.
between 2,600 to 2,800 most days. The calories, that's where they were at. Most of the time in my quote unquote off season. But I spent some time at maintenance too, post prep. Like I ramped it up slowly. So I think at first I was probably only on 2,100
Okay.
calories, seeing how I was doing. I'm up a little bit more, 2,400. Okay, still shredded. I have some pictures post that I was in the Anytime Fitness locker room looking pretty peeled still, so and then bumped it up a little bit. And so 26 to 2,800 was where I kind of landed. That took me towards the end of the off season, I would say. So, not the most amount of food, but not the worst, livable for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a pretty moderate surplus. Like coming from that, it's a small surplus, but like maybe like a half a pound a week or so.
Yeah,
Um,
I was kind of going by feel, and so I track all my weigh-ins, and
yeah,
I'd be like, okay, maybe I'll push a little bit more food this week because I didn't gain anything this week, and then I might gain a pound, and I might back off, just kind of a little bit like that. And so the average kind of would average out to
yeah.
about 2 pounds a month, maybe 2 pounds, 1.5 pounds a month, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, for about 8 months straight, I'd say. So yeah.
And you had the intent, like I'm going to turn this into a prep the next year, right?
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
itch was not scratched. I'm
Okay.
hoping to be as efficient as I can in my off season, make the off season feel a bit like a prep, stay very close, and then have a shorter, more aggressive diet to the stage. And it's funny, I'm going to try and make a reel out of this, but there's some clip of James in the last Natty News Daily podcast being like, hearing my prep process in 2022. He's like, it sounds like it could maybe be a little bit condensed or like more efficient. And like, I think if you listen to my response there, I was like almost a little defensive. I was like, well, I mean, you want to grow muscle and you want to get really lean. Like it's a long process, but James had some good insight, and so we made it more efficient. We made it more condensed, basically. Yeah.
Awesome.
Let's talk about that a little bit, right? Because you're absolutely right. Like that staying that lean, doing that thing that you did for a lot of people is just not going to work. But I think the carrot at the end of the stick of knowing like I'm turning this around in a very short period of time can be that extra bit to probably help people. Because like yeah, if I'm indefinitely going into an off season or like a 3 year off season, I'm thinking about like 2,800 calories for forever and staying shredded. Like I'm going to break at some point. But knowing that like there's a light at the end of the tunnel is going to help. So let's talk through like this prep specifically. What first off, like what led you to hiring a coach this time? I think this is a huge topic for a lot of people to talk about that's probably not talked about enough for experienced athletes. Because we hear it all the time. Like people do it. Steve Hall just did it with Cliff for the first time ever, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, it's so nice." But there's almost the stigma if you're a high level athlete who also coaches that you
Mm.
can't have a coach because you're like, well, I have to like prove it myself to prove to my clients, or maybe that's like what some people think, but maybe it's not true.
Yeah. And so I think I did have a little bit of that mindset, like from 2019 to 2022. Like I did want to kind of prove to the world that I could do it myself. And I had some also negative experiences with some coaches as well too, which kind of like led me down that path. But I finished my 2022 season and I went from show to show and I saw my physique kind of fade under my own direction, basically. I was thinking in my head like I do probably need a coach, right? And I had actually been talking to Brendan a little bit during that season. I didn't go for him that time, but I really thought that the plans I had laid out, that it was going to be really beneficial for me to have someone in my corner that would not only, get more out of me in terms of a higher level of adherence and focus, but also, have the knowledge and experience to kind of back up the application of, what we're going to do diet and training wise, to keep the physique alive during I have a pretty long season planned. So, that was the motivation. And Brandon is someone I really look up to. Like he's someone who comes in top-notch shape himself. If you look at his track record, every single one of his athletes seems peeled. I will say I think that lighting over there in Australia is another level. It's another level of lighting. I don't deny the quality of the athletes, but I don't think the shows in the States are lit like that too often. But his track record is amazing. He knows all the physiology that goes into it, and he's very good at kind of getting me motivated too. Something about his personality just really does it for me. So that was the decision to hire him specifically. Yes.
He's a
Nice.
great dude, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're watching this, Brandon, kudos. Yeah, I agree. Like he's known for what he does, right? Like he has a wait list of athletes for that exact reason because him and his team especially do just like an amazing job. So, um,
Yes.
now, this kind of ties into what I was mentioning a little bit ago. One of those things that you have chronically kind of had to deal with is the edema in your ankles, potentially from going very, very long diets, potentially very harsh diets, very low carb for extended periods of time, where when you do reintroduce carbs, it's kind of this like blow up effect. Are
Yeah.
you dealing with that now still? Is that something you guys talked about? Because I know that was something like we even discussed of like trying to figure out what
Mhm.
was going on with it, really.
Yeah, so that's super interesting you bring that up. So, prior to today, I had been doing one weekly high carb day with Brandon, and I was not getting any edema. Today is my first. He gave me a little bit of a two carb high day, so he threw a little bit extra at me. He wanted to slow me down a little bit, and I've been watching all day for the edema. And let's see, do I have much going on? There's a little bit there. I'm not gonna lie. There's a little bit. Yeah, do you guys want to see? You want
Yeah,
firsthand view here?
for the YouTube.
All
This is
right,
the
can you guys
extra.
see?
Yeah, just a touch there.
Yeah, so this isn't near as bad of an experience. The calf is still showing, but
Mhm.
yeah, there's a little bit of a layer there. And so I went down more of the rabbit hole with this whole edema thing. And I actually had talked to Brandon about it too, and he had some interesting insight on it. And this was actually, we haven't touched on it in terms of our asserting the coach athlete relationship, but I talked to him on Instagram maybe a few years ago, and he related to something called refeeding syndrome. And it's really interesting if you look it up. There's some cases of like Holocaust survivors who were starved and ended up dying because basically they gave them an IV refeed that was too much for their body to handle at once, and it seems to be based off like an electrolyte imbalance, basically. Um, so basically, if you get depleted enough, sucked down enough, like your body seems to kind of find this different strategy for handling electrolytes. And then if you kind of refeed yourself and bring yourself back into a more anabolic state, those electrolytes are kind of changed. The formula is changed for a bit, and your that edema is kind of your body trying to sort it out, right? So it is something I'm going to have to bring up with him. I'll maybe have to give him a troubleshooting guide from my experiences navigating it. I'm not going to lie, it did stress me out a little bit today to see a little bit of it, but I kind of know how this game works for me, and we'll have to be easy at the end for sure for to land this plane. But that is something we'll have to go over, and that's kind of where I've been at with it the last little bit. I know it's kind of crazy, right? But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those like overlooked factors. Like some people deal with it. It's not, you're not the only athlete I've heard like dealing with it. Yours, I think, is probably the more extreme. But I think some of
Yeah.
that too is just like your level of conditioning. It shows so much more, right? And
Yep.
maybe it's like the process that you had to do to get to that level of conditioning that caused, this actual like rebound refeed effect. But yeah, like that's definitely what I had seen as well, like the refeeding syndrome and the solution in the medical term, I believe, is just like you just slowly increase the calories from someone who's been chronically dieted. But with a bodybuilding refeed, that's really not the that's not what we're trying to do, right? You need that like quick burst of glycogen pretty much to fill you up. So yeah,
Yeah.
in your experience, for those listening that aren't familiar, or maybe they're dealing with this and they just didn't have a name for it, what has helped you in the past with that?
Oof. Well, I think just knowing that it will die down, basically, and I think the biggest thing is that if you're heading into a contest, you can't really be playing games with it. So what you can't be doing is dieting your hardest, starting like Sunday before the show on the peak week, and then expect to be able to do a refeed Wednesday or Thursday and have it all be sorted out. Like you kind of need to be a little bit more easy state in your body that last week. So hopefully, if you're 7 days out Saturday, you're closing off that deficit right away, basically. And for me, it will take my body 3 to 4 days to kind of sort it out. And so, you could do little bit of metabolic building, Dr. Joe Klemczewski style could probably work okay. Or just like really reduce your activity and just get out of that deep deficit. It always seemed to help for me to take like a day or two off the gym, eating at maintenance, and then just you have to wait. You have to wait for your body to sort it out, and then you can't really afford to go back into that deficit anymore. Like you have to be done. You have to kind of be like, this is the condition I'm at, right? And hopefully it's a good one, right? So, but you don't want to be playing too much games with that. You don't want any funky ankles on stage. So, and also you got to think of it from a health component. Like if you're thinking, this natural bodybuilding show is kind of making me do me the same thing as Holocaust survivors, then you got to kind of think about what you're doing, be smart, right? So it's a tough one for sure, especially for a competitive athlete. It plays in my head a lot, and so even today, I'm not gonna lie, a little stressing about it, but I think we should have the tools to navigate it pretty well, and I just it's gonna be what it's gonna be. So yeah, we'll figure it out for sure.
Yeah, it seems like a timing thing, right? So like your Cliff Wilson rapid backload is not the best peaking strategy for you, right?
No, that would be the worst. I find too for me, it's like I tend to find my best look is if I do maybe a few high days and then the first low day after that when it's all kind of gone through me and I'm not really eating that much on the day. Like there's not a huge amount of food surging through my system, but the glycogen is still there. It hasn't really dissipated. I'm very tight looking. That seems to be when I find my best looks usually. And so that's a bit of a frustration, man. Like I want to carb up on 1,000 carbs and feel full and massive and satiated and veiny and dry and shit like that. But I just, it wasn't. That's not what my body's doing with things. So that is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some of the art of this sport, right? Like people don't understand like just how intricate the peaking process is, and it's not a formula. Like you have your basic principles, right? Like we need water, we need salt, we need glycogen in the right amounts. But yeah, like everybody responds so differently, whether it's GI distress, whether it's water retention, whether it's, any number of things. It truly is an art, and I love that about it. But it's also very stressful. So when people ask like, well, how do you peak someone? It's like, I don't know. We're going to practice it a bunch of different times and figure out like
Mhm.
what knobs we can turn here, you know?
Yeah, interesting enough, I've never had an athlete quite have the same situation as me, but it's sometimes I think in the back of my head, I'm like, if I give this person like the odd refeed at the end of the prep, is this going to happen to them? So I try and test it out before to
Mhm.
give them a little bit of carbs, make sure like their body's handling okay, there's no adverse effects. But I do seem to be a bit of a rare case in that instance. So yeah, that's kind of my story with the ankles there, the edema. Refeeding syndrome. Everyone look it up. It's really fun to learn about.
Yeah. And maybe, for the odd athlete that's dealing with it, now they know who to go to, who has the experience that they can lean
That's
on.
right. That's right. Absolutely. Hit me up if anyone has this issue and they've dealt with it and they didn't want to talk about it. Just shoot me a message. I'd be curious to compare our experiences for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So a little while back, you hinted you've got a relatively long season planned out. I don't know if I'm even aware. Like, this isn't even a leading question. Like, truly, what do you have planned for this year?
Yeah, so I haven't really announced it, and I'll do it on here. There's no worries. I was a little bit worried with some of the cross federation type stuff, and so maybe that's what kind of kept me from really just putting it out there. But I'm hoping to try the CPA Natural Circuit this year. So there's a show that's in just under 4 weeks in Barrie, Ontario. I'm going to give that a shot. I'm hoping there's going to be no last minute WNBF CPA beef. I don't know what I'm going to do if that happens. I don't know. I guess we'll see when it happens. But I'm hoping to do that show and potentially get a qualification for the Natural Pro qualifier that is the next week. And so I have those two planned, and then I'm hoping to do a WNBF Pro show about a month after in Connecticut. It's the Pro US Cup. And then I'm hoping to also hold on for WNBF Calgary in the fall. So we'll see how I hold up. That's a long time being really lean. The caveat that it's only been a short prep so far. I've only been dieting for 8 weeks, so we'll see how I do. I think it could be difficult at phases, but I'm hoping we can, basically be fat free pretty early and just be coasting on maintenance calories a lot of the time. And we'll see what Brandon says. I don't want to think into it too much, but I like the idea of just being peaked for a while and trying to maintain it, and then not having to deal with the ankles going up and down, not having to be at a big deficit at the end. Nailing the training, I think I'm a mature enough athlete where I could still do a lot on like maintenance or like a very, very small, like my minuscule deficit and still really hold my physique together really well with just good solid training, at the end of a contest prep. But we'll see. It's not for bodybuilding. We just gotta get out there and see what happens, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And, obviously, if people have been listening this whole time, like you holding good conditioning for a long time, like you have a proven track record of doing it. That was your off season, right? So, like,
Yeah.
if I were to say I'm going to do that, like, I don't know if I can hold that long, but like you've done it. You have a coach helping you through it now. So
Yeah.
you've got that backup. So, yeah, I think you'll make it there.
I think too, the thing with that too, and like I said, I'm not promoting that everyone should try and stay shredded year round, but I think some of the issues surrounding that, it's like it's not so much a hunger thing. It's like, at least in my experience, everyone might be different, but in my experience, it's like it's not a hunger thing where you're hungry and need more food. It's a food reward type response. So it's like food at that stage when you're that lean, it's kind of like it's a little bit like drugs, it's a little bit like an addiction, you feel a lot of good things when you eat when you're that lean. Your body's sending you a lot of signals saying this is a pretty good idea to keep eating, right? And so I find from a perspective of like physiological function, if you're at maintenance calories and shredded, at least me, like I can function decently well. But when you pick up that fork and eat the meal, that's when the challenge is not to kind of go ham and overeat and find a million things to add to your meal and keep extending it because that feeling is pretty darn good when you're lean, right? So I liken it to that. I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm not really dealing with hunger. I'm dealing with a food reward response right now, and that can kind of keep things, a little bit easier on my head in terms of dealing with it, rather than, oh, I think my body just needs this food. It's like, no, your body's just telling you to gain body fat because you're just too shredded for what your physiology wants, right? And so that could play in your head too. But if you had go in the idea with you're going to have a long season, you're going to have to contend with that. It's doable. It should be doable at least if for the right athlete at the right time.
Yeah.
I'm guessing for you, maintaining your structure helped probably a lot with managing that
Like life structure, you mean day to day?
life structure, meal structure, all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff.
Yeah, have staple meals, some high volume foods here and there. I'm a big fan of like low fat mayo and Greek yogurt, making like a mac sauce. I don't know if do you guys make mac sauce, but it's pretty good, man. A little bit of
I'm not
coleslaw
that
mix
into
in there.
mayo, actually, believe it or not.
No, no,
I,
I think
I'll
mayo is
I'll vote with you
overrated.
on that one, Connor. I like it. I'll go
you
for
like
it.
it? All right. Yeah, I love me some low calorie mac sauce on just about anything, any kind of meat. It's pretty good. It's voluminous. It's low calorie. It's high protein. Greek yogurt, low fat mayo, low sugar ketchup, a little bit of pickle, some coleslaw mix. Mix that with any type of meat at all. You get high volume. You get satiety. For me, it's just dandy to eat that. I can just eat that and be super happy. I ate it right before this podcast. Yeah, with some turkey, so it was great.
Yeah. And that's a trick in itself too. Like it takes repetitions in these diets, but like finding the foods that like accomplish the goal, but you actually enjoy eating too. For me, like last prep, that was pickled cabbage. I made it. I had it on like a sandwich out at a restaurant one time. I'm like, this seems simple enough and this is amazing. And
Yep.
it like solves it, it's fermented, so maybe it helps with my gut. It's high volume, it's low calorie. I can literally throw it on anything. So my meals were like, all right, my basic rice and chicken, now just throw a bunch of pickled cabbage on it and it's amazing, right? So people all the time like, "Oh, you eat the same thing every lunch." And I still do, right? Because I like this meal. I'm not
Yeah.
sacrificing anything by eating this. Like I like this. So you have to get out of that mindset for the younger like bodybuilders, younger lifters, people getting into this like you don't get more brownie points by suffering more. right? Like you got to get there, but you don't have to hate every aspect of it. And not like
Yeah.
no judge is going to applaud for you. Like, oh, you ate, tuna out of a can and cold rice for 18 weeks. Like, great,
Yeah.
awesome. Like, I enjoy my food.
I'll be honest too, like it's 2025. There's some crazy food technology, like, get a Ninja Creamy if it helps, you can just there's so many high protein foods and so many options. I really don't think the same level of like suffering in terms of lack of food variety is really that necessary. Like I don't even feel overly restricted on 1900 calories. Like you can make a Ninja Creamy, you can make mac sauce, you can eat whatever fruits and veg you want within reason, right? There's just, I don't know, man. I just don't think it's that hard,
Yeah.
to be honest.
And learning to cook, right? The number of people that I see post their meals and like there's no seasoning on anything. It's like baked chicken that's like been pulled and it's just super dry. You're like, man, get a barbecue, do a little basic marinade. Like it's pretty simple. Let's figure this out, guys.
Yeah, it's not hard to make low calories taste pretty good, right? And essentially you get that food reward at the end of prep. Like things that don't even taste so good in the off season will start to taste pretty good. So it's like I kind of liken it to that. It's like me eating this pork tenderloin now is like me eating like a filet mignon in the off season. It's the same feeling. So yeah, just kind of dig into those aspects for sure.
Yeah. And the caveat to that, the flip side, not that we're saying like, oh, macro Tetris everything and make these like weird
Mm.
concoctions, right? Like if you listen to the foods you were just talking about, they're all like whole foods, right? They have good
Yep.
micronutrient profile, they're whole food, they're satiating. It's not like we're saying like make this, protein fluff cake with 18
Yeah.
different ingredients. Like, no, that's not it. Like you have to balance that. Like I enjoy the food, but also it's consistent, it fills me up, like not
Yeah.
that chasing how do I fit every single macro into these like low calorie syrups and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
And so I'm actually let's touch on that real quick because I'm in a really good spot with that because in 2019 when I did my own diet, like I kind of tried to maximize like food volume and making all these weird recipes, and I had a ton of gut issues, man. I was farting nonstop, my digestion was poor. It just made the prep awful, and so I kind of found a system that works for me where I'm still getting a little bit of food volume here and there. I have my staple foods that work, but I keep fiber within like a fairly tightly controlled range. Like we're talking like maybe 15 to 30 would be my range. And that seems to suit me really well on these, 1800, 1900 calorie diets. That seems to work really well. And if I go way above that, it seems to just really mess with my digestion and really doesn't feel good. It's not a good time. So I'm glad I'm at a good spot with that because I've done the volume maxing. I've done the volume maxing approach. Every meal is volume maxed. We're talking xanthan gum, protein fluff. We're talking the low fat popcorn. We're talking potatoes. We're talking zucchini, shredded zucchini on everything, and that just destroyed my stomach when I tried to volume max everything just to try and be a little bit less hungry. So that's not worth it. I say find that right balance of hunger and satiety for you, and then hopefully, if your stomach feels good, you should be feeling good basically, and you will have to be hungry sometimes, but it's a lot worse to have stomach discomfort all day. Trust me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It comes down to just being like responsible, right? Like if you have to question like, should I really be eating this? The answer is probably no, right? Because
Yeah,
most of the foods that we're talking about, it's like, yeah, we have our little bits here and there. Like you said, you're creamy, right? That's your little treat. But every meal shouldn't be like that, right? Like have some basic foods in there, some good old vegetables and fruit and just go from there and don't try
yeah.
and get things in prep.
I try and tell people too, like on a satiety scale, like a hedonic scale, like try not to make the meals too hedonic during prep because it's going to be such a driver of just insanity that you're just going to want to keep eating and eating. So like try and find that balance of something that tastes good to you, satisfying, but doesn't like make you think about that food all day. You're not just waiting till the next part of the day when you eat it, right? You kind of get to be able to eat and move on your day, basically. So make it so bodybuilding isn't just making you think about food all day is a good way to be. Yeah.
Absolutely. I know Dan's thinking in the background because every post of Dan's, if you're not following Dan, you should be by now, just to watch his food posts, which are routine, daily, and scheduled. Every food has a reason, right? Like when you go into your meals, it's not like, oh, this looks nice and that looks nice and maybe I'll do this. Like you've got your pickles for your salt and you know exactly how many you're eating. You have your berries for your antioxidants and you know how much you're eating there and for the fiber content, right? So like your food has a purpose, but it's also good quality food and you enjoy eating it. So, and everyone's going to be different. I would not be able to eat the way Dan does. I think I'm probably more in line with Connor, but you know, and Leroy's even like the opposite, right? Like very strict to a T with his meal plan, pretty much. Doesn't vary whatsoever. So, you know, there's variation within, you know, all successful people within bodybuilding. You have to just find your
Yeah.
own system. But I think there's probably some principles, and I think the pendulum is swinging in a better way than where it was. I think we're in a happy medium with most people now. We've gone beyond the like strict meal plan where everything's boring, basic tilapia and asparagus. We've gone past the macro Tetrising of everything, of everyone was eating protein cakes, and now we're kind of like in
Mm.
this happy area. So
I think so too. That's where I found myself landing, and it feels good.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so Connor, I think this was we covered so many different things. I think we covered everything I wanted to talk about. Obviously, areas that I didn't expect to talk about, but that's the beauty of this kind of podcast where we just kind of like open it up and go for it. If there's anything we didn't touch on that you wanted to, or if there's anything that you want to leave the listeners with, kind of from the topics we talked about or anything like that, what would be that kind of parting shot for you?
I have one quick thing I'll go over, and it's just I think one thing I was overlooking, if you want to become a successful athlete, you need a really solid support system, right? So if you're struggling with like maintaining relationships that are difficult, or if you like don't have a solid coach or people in your corner, this bodybuilding stuff's going to be pretty hard. So I think one of the things I did that contributed to a lot of the progress I made the last little bit was finding, some good people around me, some good relationships, some good friends, a good coach, and even I worked with some posing coaches as well. They all been helping me, and so try and build that support system. That's a really, really important aspect to your success. And it's not all just exercise execution and biomechanics and macros, right? You need to have that people in your corner that make you feel good to do it, that encourage you. And I think that's like a really important thing that everyone should look into too. And if you're not developing relationships like that, good ones, then it's going to be tougher. It's not going to be as easy on you. So I'd encourage everyone to go out there and kind of build their building ecosystem. That gives you a good social support, basically. So that's my parting note, if I have one. Yeah.
No, I love that. I think that is dramatically kind of underappreciated. Maybe because like a lot of us, I've got Dan, I've got Leroy, I've got my coach. We start to make these connections the longer you're in the sport. But definitely for those first timers, it can feel very isolating. Especially like I know Connor, PEI, like it's not a very populated area for natural bodybuilding. Where I grew up, not
Yeah.
very popular in natural bodybuilding. So unless you're in one of these hubs, you might be the only person doing this crazy sport, that you love. And it's hard to kind of feel that alone sometimes. So yeah, I definitely would double down on that thought for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, guys, if you like the podcast, we obviously like the subscribes, the follows, the shares, all that good stuff on social media. Give Connor a follow. I'm going to let you drop your Instagram real quick because we forgot to do that. What's the at?
Connor.St. at Instagram. So yeah, or whatever it is, the at sign. Yeah, Connor.St. Yeah.
Ampersand, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you want to follow his journey, if you have questions about any of the topics we talked today, reach out to him there. And we appreciate you guys as always. We will see you in the next episode.